Have you ever stopped to think that maybe it could be that your unhappiness isn't real? That everything you're feeling now is just an illusion created by your own mind? There's a Japanese concept called Fuko no Sakan. Very few people know about it. And look, when you understand this concept, you'll never look at your problems the same way again. Fuko no Sakan, literally meaning the slope of unhappiness. This concept is not just another pretty term. It is one of the most powerful ideas to ever emerge from Japanese philosophy. Because the truth is this: you're not unhappy. You're going downhill, and the further down you go, the faster you fall. Think about it. You wake up in a bad mood. You spill your coffee. You get into a fight in traffic. You're late for work. You get yelled at by your boss. You argue with someone you love, and at the end of the day you look back and think, why does everything go wrong for me? The answer? Fuko no Sakan. The Japanese realized this decades ago, that there's a precise moment when a small problem transforms into an avalanche, and that most people don't realize when they start sliding down that slope. But some people realize this, and these people manage to stop before it's too late. Today you're going to hear the story of a guy who was at the bottom of that hill, and who discovered how to climb back up. But first, if you want to understand more about how the mind works and how to apply ancestral wisdom to your life, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and click the hype button. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt trapped in a spiral of problems? Comment Fuko no Sakan if you've ever experienced this. Back to the video. Chapter 1. The Character and the Beginning of the Fall. Daniel was 34 years old. He lived in Seattle. He worked for a technology company. He had an ordinary life, but he had a problem that he didn't even know he had. It all started on a Monday. Daniel woke up 10 minutes late. Nothing serious, right? Just 10 minutes. He skipped breakfast. He ran out, he got in his car, and of course in the traffic. He arrived at work 15 minutes late. The boss looked at him. He didn't say anything, but the look said it all. Daniel sat down at his desk. He turned on his computer. And then, an email. An email from the client complaining about an error in the project. An error that wasn't even his fault. But do you know what happened? Daniel replied to the email angrily. He sent a curt, harsh, defensive text. The customer was offended. He escalated the situation to Daniel's manager, and suddenly, that 10-minute morning delay turned into a meeting with HR at the end of the day. On his way home, Daniel had a car accident. Nothing serious, just a scratch. But it meant a few more dollars in damages. When he got home, his wife asked him how his day had been, and Daniel exploded. He yelled. He said things he didn't mean to say. She left the room crying. Daniel sat on the sofa alone, and he thought, what's happening to me? The answer? Fuko no Sakan. He was going downhill, and he didn't even know it. In the following days, it got worse. Much worse. Daniel started sleeping poorly. He would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about his problems, and he would wake up in the morning tired, irritated, and without energy. At work, he started making mistakes. Small mistakes. But in a high-pressure environment, small mistakes become big problems. He started avoiding people. He wouldn't answer messages. He wouldn't go to social gatherings. He kept to himself. And the more he isolated himself, the worse it got. Because when you're alone with your bad thoughts, they get louder, stronger. His wife tried to help, but Daniel pushed her away. He said everything was fine, that it was just a phase. But it wasn't a phase. It was Fuko no Sakan. 3 months later, Daniel had gained 8 kilos. He drank 3 beers a night. He no longer exercised. And the worst part? He had completely lost his motivation. He would wake up in the morning and think, what for? Why even try? Because that's what the slope does to you. It takes away your hope. It makes you believe you have no control, that you are a victim of circumstances. And you know what's most dangerous about all this? Daniel didn't realize that he himself was creating this reality. Each bad choice led to another. Each negative thought fueled the next. Each small problem he ignored turned into a bigger one. It was as if he were doing a reverse Kaizen, where instead of improving 1% each day, he was getting 1% worse each day, making small bad decisions that were gradually making his life worse. He was trapped, not in a situation but in an illusion. The illusion that he was unhappy, when in reality he was simply going down a slope that he himself had started to descend. Chapter 2. The Encounter and the Revelation. It was on a Saturday that everything changed. Daniel was sitting in a park, alone, staring into nothingness, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. With an expression of sadness and frustration, a Japanese gentleman sat down next to him. White hair, about 70 years old, upright posture, calm gaze. He didn't say anything for about 5 minutes. He just stood there, watching the birds, the trees, the children playing. Then he turned to Daniel and asked, "Do you know what a slope is?" Daniel looked at him, confused. "A slope? Like a sloping street?" The old man smiled. "No, I'm not talking about the street. I'm talking about Fuko no Sakan, the slope of unhappiness." Daniel frowned. "I've never heard of that." "Of course not," said the old man. "Because perhaps you're in the middle of it. And when you're going down a slope, you don't perceive the speed, you only feel the wind on your face." The old man introduced himself. Hiroshi, Japanese immigrant, former philosophy professor. And then he asked a question that changed everything. "Tell me, when did it start?" Daniel didn't understand. "When did what start?" "The descent," Hiroshi said. "Everyone who goes down a slope has a moment, a starting point. It might be small, so small you don't even notice it. But that's where it all begins." Daniel thought for a moment, and then suddenly he remembered. That Monday, the 10 minutes he was late. It was one day I woke up late, nothing serious, but after that, it seems like everything went downhill. Hiroshi nodded, as if he already knew the answer. "Fuko no Sakan. You activated the slope, and then you started rolling." Hiroshi explained. In ancient Japan, the samurai had a deep understanding of how the mind works. They knew that war didn't just happen on the battlefield, it happened within the mind itself. And they realized that there's a point where you lose control, not because the world is against you, but because you've triggered a downward spiral. Fuko no Sakan isn't about bad luck or fate. It's about mental physics. Imagine a real slope. If you trip and start rolling, what happens? You gain speed. It becomes harder to stop. And each time you hit something, you hurt yourself more. Until, eventually, you reach the bottom. That's exactly how it works in life. You have a small problem, a delay, an argument, a mistake. And if you don't stop to deal with it, what happens? That problem generates another, and that other one generates yet another. Because when you're stressed, you don't think straight. When you don't think straight, you make bad decisions. When you make bad decisions, you create more problems. And then you look at your life and think, why does everything go wrong? But it's not that everything goes wrong. It's that you're on a slope, and you didn't realize it when you started going downhill. Hiroshi continued, the samurai called this losing your center. They trained their whole lives to recognize this moment, because they knew that if you lose your center, you lose the battle, no matter how strong you are, no matter how skilled you are. Although the concept of Fuko no Sakan truly became popular in the post-World War II period, in Japan, people have used the slope as a metaphor for various aspects of life for centuries, including to explain this gradual descent into unhappiness. And how did they stop? Daniel asked. That's the important part, Hiroshi said. They weren't trying to go uphill. They stopped going downhill first. Chapter 3. Ancestral Wisdom and Practice. Hiroshi took an old notebook out of his backpack. He opened it to a marked page. It had some Japanese characters written by hand. Fuko no Sakan has 3 parts, he said. 3 things you need to understand if you want to escape the slippery slope. Part 1. Recognition. You need to realize when the descent begins, and that's harder than it seems, because the human mind is a master at deceiving itself. It makes you believe that everything is fine, that it's just a bad day, that tomorrow will be better. But it doesn't get any better, because you haven't changed anything, you've just waited. Daniel remembered the last 3 months, how many times he had thought, tomorrow will be better. And it never was. Second part, interruption, Hiroshi continued. You don't climb a hill while it's rolling. You stop first. And stopping means doing something different, breaking the pattern, because every bad action leads to the next. If you don't interrupt the cycle continues. And third, asked Daniel. Part 3. Reconstruction. You need to build friction, put obstacles in the way of the descent, create habits that hold you back, routines that anchor you, because without that, any wind will push you back down the slope. Hiroshi closed his notebook. In the time of the samurai, they had rituals for this: morning meditation, physical training, tea ceremony. It wasn't just tradition, it was mental engineering. They were building friction against the slope. And you can do the same today, he said, looking straight into Daniel's eyes. But you need to start now, because the longer you stay on the slope, the deeper you'll go. Hiroshi proposed a challenge: 7 days, 7 specific actions. Day 1, you will identify the first problem, the one that started everything, and you will solve it. It doesn't matter if it's small. It doesn't matter if it seems insignificant. You solve it, Daniel thought. The first problem had been the delay, but the delay had been caused by... he wasn't sleeping well. He was going to bed too late. So on day 1, Hiroshi said, you're going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. No negotiation. Day 2, you're going to do something you've been avoiding, a difficult conversation, an email you don't want to answer, a problem you've been putting off, because everything you avoid adds weight to the descent. Day 3, you're going to help someone, anyone, in any way, because when you're on the slope, you become self-centered. Everything is about you, your problems, your pain, and that keeps you stuck. When you help someone, you remember that the world is bigger than you. Day 4, you're going to move your body, exercise, walking, anything, because the mind and body are not separate. When the body is still, the mind gets stuck. Day 5, you're going to write. 3 things that went right. 3 things you're grateful for. Because on the downhill slope, you only see what's wrong. You need to train your brain to see what's right too. Day 6, you're going to reconnect. Call a friend. Spend time with family. Because isolation fuels the downward spiral. Connection creates friction. And on the 7th, Hiroshi smiled, you're going to do something just for pleasure. Something that has no productivity, no objective, just because it makes you feel alive. Daniel wrote everything down. What if I fail one day? You will fail, Hiroshi said. Everyone fails, but failing isn't the problem. The problem is giving up. If you fall, you get up the next day and keep going, because that's what it means to get off the slope. It's an uphill climb, and uphill climbs are slow. Chapter 4. The Transformation. Daniel did what Hiroshi told him to do. Day 1. He went to bed at 10. He woke up rested for the first time in months. Day 2. He had a conversation with his wife. He apologized. He cried. She cried. But he was honest, and something changed between them. Day 3. He helped a co-worker with a project. Day 4. He ran only 20 minutes, but when he finished, he felt different, lighter. Day 5. He wrote. And at first it was difficult to find 3 things, but he found them, and then he found 3 more and 3 more. Day 6, he called his father. They hadn't spoken in months. The conversation went well. Day 7, he went to a show. He didn't post on Instagram, he didn't take a picture, he just enjoyed the music. And you know what happened? He stopped going down. It wasn't an instantaneous process, but it was gradual. In the 2nd week, he repeated the process, and in the 3rd and in the 4th, and gradually he began to climb. The problem still existed. The work was still stressful. The traffic was still bad. But he was no longer on the slope, because he had created friction. He had built barriers against the descent. 3 months later, Daniel met Hiroshi again in the same park. "How are you?" the old man asked. "Better," said Daniel. "Much better." "So you understand?" "I understand. I wasn't unhappy. I was trapped in an illusion. The illusion that I had no control, that things only happened to me." Hiroshi nodded. "Fuko no sakan. The slope only has power if you believe you can't stop it. But you always can, at any time. You just need to choose." Clinical psychologist Dr. James Pennebaker of the University of Texas conducted a study on what he calls rumination spirals. He discovered that when people get stuck in negative thought patterns, their brain chemistry changes. Cortisol increases, serotonin decreases, And the longer you stay in that state, the harder it becomes to break free. But he also discovered something incredible, that small, consistent interventions can completely reverse this process. It doesn't require intensive therapy. It doesn't require heavy medication. It requires intentional and repeated action. The mind responds to structure, to discipline, to rituals. Fuko no Sakan is not mysticism. It is ancient neuroscience. But there's one thing Hiroshi didn't tell Daniel that day in the park, something only masters of Japanese philosophy know. Fuko no Sakan has an opposite, a sibling concept. Ko no Sakan, the slope of happiness. It's the same principle but in reverse. When you do something good, that good thing generates another good thing, and that one generates yet another. And suddenly, you're not just avoiding the descent. You're going up, and this upward movement has the same momentum effect. The higher you climb, the easier it becomes to keep climbing, but that's a topic for another day. So are you on the slope now? Think about it. When did it start? What was the first problem you ignored, the first slip-up you let slide? Because the truth is this, everyone goes downhill at some point. It's part of being human. It's part of life. The difference between those who stay trapped and those who get out is simple. Those who get out realize. Those who get out stop. Those who get out act. You're not unhappy. You're trapped in an illusion. The illusion that you can't do anything, that things simply happen to you. But you can, anytime, starting now. Fuko no Sakan, the slope of unhappiness.